Hello everyone and welcome to our channel. Before we dive into today's breaking update, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We're bringing you real, unfiltered geopolitical coverage you won't find anywhere else. And your support helps us keep going. Tap the notification bell so you never miss an urgent update on global events. Title: Zelenskyy calls for historic Trump-Putin peace talks. Vertical bar: Ukraine's bold move to end the war. The atmosphere surrounding the recent Trump-Zelenskyy meeting in Washington is one of both urgent opportunity and cautious navigation, a moment where diplomatic signals are being carefully calibrated amid ongoing conflict. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's expressed willingness to engage in trilateral talks represents a pragmatic shift rooted in the pursuit of security and the preservation of sovereignty. His readiness for a Trump-Putin-me format, regardless of time or place, is a clear overture, signaling Kiev's intent to pursue peace through direct dialogue without succumbing to coercion. For Ukraine, the willingness to entertain multiple negotiation formats is strategic. By not prescribing conditions around venue or timing, Ukraine underlines flexibility. Yet the Kremlin's insistence on conditions prior to any leader-level engagement reveals Moscow's reluctance or desire to shape the agenda from a position of strength. Putin's rejection of including Zelenskyy in a potential Trump-Putin summit absent preconditions complicates matters. At the same time, Zelenskyy insists that concrete steps, such as Russian ceasefire or territory-related proposals, predate meaningful leader-level dialogues. His demand for a genuine commitment rather than symbolic gestures encapsulates Ukraine's concern that Moscow may use talks to freeze gains or legitimize aggression. He has publicly stated that Russia must cease hostilities first, and that a format for leaders to meet must follow tangible de-escalation. On the U.S. side, President Trump positions himself as the convening power, offering both a potential diplomatic bridge and a tempering influence. His role in facilitating or hosting trilateral discussions places America squarely in the center of any peace process. However, his dismissal of ceasefires as unnecessary introduces risk. While it could accelerate negotiations, it also risks proceeding without pauses for humanitarian reprieve. European leaders, present at the same Washington meeting, add another layer of complexity. They back Ukraine's calls for security guarantees and emphasize that peace must be built on justice. Their presence underscores that any trilateral summit cannot exclude Europe's interests, particularly given that Europe remains both the front line and the primary supplier of arms and economic support. Moscow's stance further illustrates the diplomatic dilemma. While Putin has not categorically ruled out a meeting with Zelenskyy, he insists conditions must exist. That precondition effectively sidelines Kiev, transforming diplomacy into a transactional concession rather than mutual negotiation. It casts doubt on whether any forthcoming talks would truly aim for peace or merely validate Russian gains. Meanwhile, Zelenskyy continues to promote alternative venues such as Istanbul, Switzerland, or the Vatican, locations perceived as neutral ground capable of hosting meaningful dialogue. The choice of venue matters. Theological or international prestige settings could foster trust, while venues tied to partisan influence might not. The idea that the Vatican was supported by all except Russia further highlights the Kremlin's resistance to formats that Ukraine perceives as fair. This unfolding situation thus mirrors a broader strategic tug-of-war. On one side, Ukraine and its Western allies aim to keep diplomatic channels open and emphasize peace through strength. The ground truth remains that substantive peace cannot be negotiated while territory remains contested and violence continues. That places the burden on diplomacy to produce something more durable than a ceasefire, a settlement built on mutual recognition of sovereignty and security. The stakes are not just regional, they're global. A Ukraine that secures strong guarantees through trilateral talks might anchor peace and stabilize the European order. China, Iran, and other non-Western powers are closely watching how the US, Ukraine, and Russia approach negotiations. Another dimension is the messaging effect. Zelenskyy's openness signals to Russian society and global audiences that Ukraine wants peace and is not isolationist. The psychological component of diplomacy cannot be ignored. By proposing trilateral talks, Ukraine subtly reframes the power dynamics. It presents itself as an equal, not a victim. This proactive posture shifts some of the diplomatic burden to Moscow and Washington alike. It also exposes the contrast between Ukraine's flexibility and Russia's obstinacy. Yet the substantive obstacles remain immense. Territorial issues like Crimea and Donbas, security guarantee architecture, humanitarian corridor operations, these are thorny points. Without pre-negotiated frameworks, any summit could devolve into blame games. It will require immense preparatory work behind the scenes. As for the summit's timing, the faster it occurs, the greater the risk of insufficient groundwork, but delay may allow further battlefield shifts. Ultimately, what emerges is a picture of fragile diplomacy. Ukraine stands ready but demands substance. The US plays mediator but remains ambiguous. The trilateral talks' success would hinge on aligning all these agendas into a coherent, enforceable peace framework, rare alignment in modern geopolitics. The only certainty now is that war alone cannot end this conflict. Sustained negotiations will, but only if they are built on equality, recognition, and enforceable terms. The potential for a trilateral summit between Volodymyr Zelenskyy, Donald Trump, and Vladimir Putin marks a significant shift in the diplomatic theater surrounding the Ukraine conflict. Zelenskyy's willingness to sit at the table with both Trump and Putin speaks volumes about Ukraine's strategic desperation, but also its maturity in understanding the geopolitical realities it faces. The timing of such talks could not be more critical. The war has reached a bloody stalemate on many fronts, with neither side making significant territorial gains. Trump has historically shown a willingness to engage adversaries without preconditions, and his assertive diplomatic style has delivered unpredictable breakthroughs in the past. Zelenskyy's appeal to Trump appears tactical, aimed at leveraging Trump's influence over Putin to bring him to the table. Yet Russia's response has been typically cautious and vague. The Kremlin insists that conditions must be met before Putin would consider attending any summit. This ambiguity allows Russia to maintain control of the narrative, signaling openness to diplomacy without committing to any concrete path. This dual-track approach, diplomatic theater paired with military entrenchment, has been a hallmark of Russia's posture throughout the war. Ukraine's insistence that any summit include specific outcomes raises the stakes for all participants. Kiev does not want a photo op. It wants actionable, enforceable steps. Ukraine, having suffered massive destruction, cannot afford a diplomatic failure that erodes its remaining leverage. Trump's involvement brings both potential and unpredictability. His personal rapport with Putin may enable him to extract concessions that traditional diplomats could not. On the other hand, his often transactional view of foreign policy raises concerns that he may push for a deal that benefits U.S. political optics rather than Ukraine's sovereignty. Trump's language has already sparked some unease among European allies, particularly his remark that a ceasefire might not be necessary for talks to proceed. European leaders have invested billions in military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Their strategic, moral, and financial commitments make them key stakeholders. A trilateral format that sidelines them could fracture the Western alliance or create parallel diplomatic channels with differing agendas. This makes the trilateral approach simultaneously efficient and diplomatically dangerous. China, Iran, and other non-Western powers are closely watching how the US, Ukraine, and Russia approach negotiations. If the West is perceived as pushing Ukraine into premature talks, it could embolden similar tactics in Taiwan or the Middle East. Conversely, if Ukraine emerges with stronger security guarantees, it could reinforce the credibility of Western diplomacy. For Trump, orchestrating peace in Ukraine would be a major diplomatic victory during a U.S. election cycle, potentially boosting his international credibility. For Zelenskyy, securing a summit without compromising national integrity could solidify his status as a wartime leader capable of both resistance and reconciliation. For Putin, participation in such talks would risk portraying Russia as seeking Western approval or admitting difficulty in achieving military goals. By proposing trilateral talks, Ukraine subtly reframes the power dynamics. It presents itself as an equal, not a victim. Rather than waiting for a seat at the table, Zelenskyy is creating one. Ultimately, the outcome of such a summit will depend less on its structure and more on the political will of its participants. If all three leaders come with intent to make measurable progress on ceasefires, humanitarian corridors, prisoner exchanges, or territorial frameworks, then the trilateral meeting could be a turning point. For Ukraine, the gamble is high, but so are the stakes. Diplomacy may be the only way out, but only if pursued with clarity, unity, and a shared commitment to peace with justice. The question remains whether all sides will show the equal commitment needed to make these historic talks a reality, rather than just another diplomatic gesture. Stay tuned for more breaking updates on this developing story. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for the latest in global geopolitics.